Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militan Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very happy to be with all of you this morning. We will continue with a few more questions on the basis of the two presentations I gave on the theory of everything, the Vedanta perspective. Here there is a question by a devotee. According to the theory of everything, how we came into existence? By evolution or by creation? Or is there any connection of this theory with the theory of evolution? And there is one more related question. I thought we shall combine these two together and we can discuss. What is the reason for a soul to come to this earth and suffer? What is in the first place that made us to fall to this world? So I thought that both of them are slightly related, or at least I can cover the two. Now, according to the theory of everything, how we came into existence, by evolution or by creation, as I mentioned earlier, scientists are still working on the theory of creation. The theory of everything. It is not that they have cracked it, they have understood. And it is of one kind of a discovery and understanding and the forces of nature, and then trying to unify the principles of quantum mechanics with theory of relativity and all of those kind of things. That happens on another level. What I was trying to point out was, even according to one of the most prominent scientists like Stephen Hawking, he says that the understanding of the theory of everything should result in understanding who we are and why the universe exists and what was the plan of God who made all these things. That's where I see there's the convergence. Definitely what the scientists are talking about, the unification of the four forces, that's very different from what the Vedanta is talking about. I'm not bringing some kind of a oversimplification and oversimplistic explanation that Vedanta has already figured out that. I'm not doing any of those kind of such tall claims. Sometimes people do that, but it doesn't meet the rigorous, logical, reasonable analysis. But what we are saying is that if the theory of everything ultimately is meant to answer questions like why we exist, why the universe exists, and what was the plan of God who made all these kind of things, we are saying that Vedanta has also analyzed these very fundamental questions of why we exist, why the universe exists, and what is the purpose of all this creation. That's where we find there is a common ground. The way science approaches the theory of everything or the grand unification is very different. And the way in Vedanta, the methodology, it is all completely different. Here there is a lot of rigorous mathematics and all of those kind of things. Here this is another kind of an approach. We are not saying that, Vedanta had figured out all these things. We are not. What Vedanta had figured out is that the ultimate questions, why we exist, why the universe exists, and what was God's plan when He created this world. That is what Vedanta has figured out. And that is what we are trying to understand. So now, actually one devotee spoke to me after the presentation. He didn't write, I don't know. Luckily he didn't write. He was a little critical. He said, your presentation really didn't answer us the question why we exist, why the universe exists, and what was in God's mind. And he said that you really didn't cover that. So I reflected on that, and I also felt that maybe yes, I brought the whole discussion to one kind of a conclusion, but then maybe I didn't combine all of them together. And some of these questions also have triggered that kind of question. Why we came into this world? Why did we fall into this world? Like the second devotee has asked the question. Let's cover these kind of things. So we talked about that there is this material world is an interplay of causes and effects. And this causality understanding is true in science. It is true even in the Vedanta philosophy. Now, we also discussed that the causality is such that there are many layers of causes and multiple causes. And in fact, the whole universe as it appears is a complex web of causes and effects, all arranged on the time dimension. That was another point that I made, right? So now, here we have, and we also talked about that Vedanta explores that is there an ultimate cause from which all other causes and everything has come about. And then we mentioned that the Vedanta presents an argument and says that yes, there is an absolute truth from which everything has come. There is an absolute truth which maintains and sustains everything. And there is an absolute truth into which all of this goes back and rests finally. So that is an absolute truth. Now you may ask the question, what is the cause of this absolute truth? This absolute truth is Nishkaranaya, has no other cause. He's the Adi, but Anadi, has no other cause. And that is why it is very different from the rest of the sequence of causes. And we talked about the example of the locomotive. And all the locomotives are moving, but then there is the engine that's pulling everything else. And the locomotive engine doesn't require anything else to pull it because it has the capacity to pull itself and pull other locomotive cars. So all of these kind of things we discussed. And so there is an absolute truth. And another thing is that we can speculate about what is this absolute truth. Is there an absolute? Actually, you cannot figure out. Human reason, human intelligence fails to comprehend this. If we were to trace its cause, where does it end? So we take information from the Vedic literatures and say and understand that yes, there is one ultimate cause from which everything has come. And we can even continue to speculate what is the nature of that absolute truth. But we take information from the Vedic literatures that that absolute truth is a sentient person. And then the Vedanta literature describes that. What is the nature of that person? What are his attributes and so on. So now, the question is, why we exist, why the universe exists, and what was God's plan. Because this was the unifying, this was the fundamental thing that we brought up. Where is the answer for these questions? Again, we get some very, very interesting perspectives from the Vedanta philosophy, as explained in the Srimad-Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures. Now, if you say that the absolute truth is a person, is sentient, and a person means, like we are also persons. So by studying us, we can try to understand a little bit about that person. Or for instance, like Bible says, man is made in the image of God. This is another interesting thing I would like to point out. There are many times Prabhupada referred to this quote of the Bible. You see how Srila Prabhupada was actually so broad-minded. He wanted to make a philosophical point, he would take from the Bible, because he had respect for Bible too. So that's the kind of a perspective Prabhupada had so much respect for Jesus, Bible, and other religions also. And he said that ultimately all these religions are teaching us that we must recognize God, we must follow God's instruction, we must surrender to God, and we must develop love for God. So this is the way Prabhupada saw, and Prabhupada did not hesitate to even quote from the Bible. So now let's come back to this. So absolute truth is sentient, absolute truth is a person. Now, when somebody says that the absolute truth is a person, there is a very big obligation. Now we must explain, what is that person doing? What does that person keep himself busy with? And all of these kind of things. What does he like to do? Because a person means he has likes, he has dislikes, and he has feelings, he has emotions. And what does activities? What does he do with his time? I don't know if you have heard this story. There's one devotee, ISKCON devotee, an American devotee. He tells this story that how he grew up in a family. They were all very devout Christians and they would go to the church. His parents would go to the church. And then there were so this boy, as a young boy, he would go, his parents would ask him to go to the church. And he asked them, he would attend on a Sunday in a church in America, or probably in other parts of the world too. There's something called a Sunday school where young boys and girls, students, young people go and they get to learn something about the Bible. So he would go as a young boy and hear about Bible and Jesus and all of that. And then one day, as he grew up and became probably a high school boy, he asked the priest, what does God do in the kingdom of God? If there is God and there is, what does he do? And then he was fantasizing, what could God be doing? Maybe there is a perpetual party there and God will be moving around from table to table with people eating, drinking, whatever that, Western idea of heavenly life or something like that. And then what's God doing? And okay, it's nice to have a party, but if it's a perpetual party, endless party, or party going on and on, after some time, even the party will become so boring. And if God has been going through this partying since time eternal, and how boring the party must be for God. And so God must be filled with boredom. What's going on? What is going on in God's kingdom? He asked this kind of question to the priest, and the priest got very angry and said, don't ask such questions. And then he said, all right, I will not ask. He kept quiet. So like this kind of inquiry always persisted in his mind. If God is a person, what does God do? And then he came in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books, and then he started reading, and then Prabhupada's books and the Bhagavatam and the Krishna book tells what God does in the spiritual world. And then it was so fascinating to find this kind of an analysis. Actually, that's what the Bhagavatam does. That's what the Vedanta philosophy does. First of all, it is said that Absolute Truth is a person, and if he is a person, there's one more question. I'll combine that. Somebody had asked the question. Where is this? Here. Are there references in the Vedanta Sutra which point towards the Absolute Truth being a person? Yes. There are a few sutras, but one sutra that comes to my mind very, very quickly, quoted by Srila Prabhupada, is Rasovai Saha. Rasaha means a sense of enjoyment. And he is full of enjoyment. That Absolute Truth, and he is just full of it. Actually, you see, this is the most fundamental feature of a person. You take anybody, even in this world, everyone is looking for pleasure. If something is unpleasurable, we want to shift our position, we want to shift our activity, we want to do something else. Because pleasure is something that we are all seeking. Sigmund Freud called it this pleasure principle. And that everyone is looking for pleasure. That's a fundamental thing of a person. And so, the Absolute Truth, the absolute person, he is also always looking for pleasure. Now, another feature that we can appreciate is that if a person is looking for pleasure, and pleasure means interacting with other persons, a person will become lonely if he is alone. Just like, for instance, you lock up yourself in a room alone. Like already people are feeling the pain of lockdown. They're not able to meet friends, people, go out, and all these kind of things. So imagine you are in a room alone. You will get bored after a few hours. You will have a phone and you will want to talk to somebody, or you want to read a book. So in other words, you want to interact with another person. That's what you're looking for. Because pleasure means interacting with another person. And so, that Absolute Truth personality, who is a person full of pleasure, looking for pleasure, and he is complete in himself. And so, what he does for his pleasure, he expands and becomes many. Ekaha bahushyama. This is one of the Upanishads in the Vedic literature. That one became many persons. And in fact, there are many categories of persons he becomes. And one of the categories of persons is what we are. The living entity is a fragmental part of that Supreme Personality, Absolute Truth. We are a personality. We are a part, and we are a person, but we are part and parcel of that person. And why did we come about? For his pleasure. Because he is full of pleasure. And hence we are meant to be involved in his pleasure. That is our constitution. Now another thing is that when he is a person and we are also his emanation and we are also a person. In fact, that Absolute Truth personality has two kinds of emanation. One is the sentient emanation, another is the insentient emanation. And one is called in Sanskrit Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti. Paraprakriti is the living entity who has consciousness, and Aparaprakriti is separated energy, does not have consciousness, like Jada. So there are two kinds of expansion, Chetana expansion and Jada expansion. Jada expansion is the material world, and Chetana expansion is the living entity. So now, the Chetana expansion, the living entity, is meant to serve the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Absolute Truth personality, and in that activity is meant to give pleasure. In fact, the Vedanta, the Srimad-Bhagavatam goes on to say there are different kinds of interaction, relationships, and the interaction that happens between the soul, jiva, and the Lord. And that's how the theory of rasas come about, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expands. I won't go into that today. I've just made a mention of it. We will discuss that at great length. There's very, very interesting philosophy there. So the living entities are related with the absolute person in relationships. All these different relationships are different hues of relationships, different rasas of relationship, meant to give him pleasure. That is why we exist. Now we are trying to understand why we exist. Okay, but then why we exist here in the material world? So now, when the living entity exists and is meant to serve the Lord in various rasas, and that relationship is actually out of love. Because when two persons are involved and they are related and there is an exchange of rasa between them, it's actually out of love. Just like between friends. Like say for instance, you're sitting with your family members, your parents and sisters, brothers, and then the bell rings, you go and open the door, and then your friend comes. And then you're so happy to see the friend. Hey, come. In the back of your mind, I had enough with these family members, all of them, and they have been nagging me and this and that. It's so good. Come, let's go to the room. Let's sit. And you're exchanging a friendly relation because it gives a new kind of a joy. Because that's the name, friendly relationship gives joy. So there are varieties of relationships and it gives joy to us. And that's what happens between persons. So the absolute truth, personality, and his expansions, the jiva, are meant to give pleasure, meaning that there is a loving relationship and an activity around that relationship. And that's what gives pleasure to that absolute personality. Now, these living entities, if they have to give pleasure to the Lord, and it is through love, that love is possible only if there is free will. And hence, when the Lord expands and becomes many in the form of jiva, some of his attributes also expand into the jiva. And one of the attributes of the Lord is that he is free. So a minute freedom also expands into the jiva. And that minute freedom of the jiva is essential to manifest love with the Lord. If that freedom and free will did not exist, there is no love. Just like Prabhupada gives the example. Suppose I show gun at you and say, you love me or else. And you'll say, I love you very much, please let me go. Right? Because love cannot come from the barrel of a gun. It is said. So love cannot be forced, and hence the Lord, when he expanded into the jiva, he gave the jiva the free will. If you want, you can love me. And if you love me, that's what you're meant to, and then you can be part of my activities in the spiritual world. Now, because the jiva has that free will, there is a possibility of misuse of that free will. Now, if you say, God should not have given free will, then if there is no free will, there is no possibility of love. That's the nature of a personality. That's the nature of love. Love requires freedom. When that freedom exists, you can love heartily. I don't know if you have heard this story. I've made this, sometimes share it in some classes. Before in the 1980s and before 1980s, there was USSR, communist America, Russia, and there was America, and there was always Cold War, right? So once, it's a joke from those days. Once, a Russian and an American met. And then the American said, American, he was very boastful of his democracy and freedom and all of that, liberty and all of that. So this American said, I can stand in Washington, D.C., I can stand in front of the White House and loudly shout, the President of America is the biggest fool on earth and nothing will happen to me. Can you do that in Moscow? He challenged the Russian. So the Russian thought for a moment and he said, yeah, you can stand in Moscow, in the Kremlin Square, and you can shout, the President of America is the biggest fool on earth and nothing will happen to you. And you understand. So in Russia, you cannot say that the prime premier of Russia is a fool, biggest fool. You will have problem. You will run into problem. But in America, freedom, liberty exists. So in America, because such freedom exists, there'll be people who really love their country, love their president, and all of that is possible. But in a communist Russia, you have to love your premier. Otherwise, you will land in the jail or something like that. So everybody will be full of fear and they will say, yes, I will love my premier. They will say. But is there real love? They don't bother about it. So now you see how for love to exist, the background of free will is very, very essential. That's the nature of love. And hence, Krishna has given that living entity the free will. Now, when the free will is misused, there is a faint possibility that the living entity can misuse that free will and then develop a desire that why I should serve Krishna and be part of his pleasure. And when we say part of his pleasure, it is not that the jiva serves the Lord and Lord enjoys and jiva suffers because of that, giving him enjoyment. No, it's not like that. The Lord enjoys, the jiva also enjoys. That's the nature of enjoyment. Both of them are enjoying. It's full of pleasure. The spiritual world is full of pleasure. Krishna is enjoying with the devotees. Devotees are serving Krishna, and there is pleasure for the devotees, there is pleasure for Krishna. It is full of pleasure. So, somehow the living entity develops a desire that why should Krishna be enjoying? And can I be the center of enjoyment myself? When the living entity develops that desire is considered to be an unconstitutional desire. Then it is unconstitutional, meaning it is not in line, in harmony with the constitution of the jiva, the makeup of the jiva. The jiva is made up in a different way. That is his constitution. His constitution is to serve Krishna and derive pleasure. But now the jiva, misusing the free will, is thinking that, can I be independent? Can I be separate from Krishna? Can I be the center of all activities? And can I be the center of all enjoyment myself? Can I take God's role myself? When that happens, the Lord, through his another expansion, Jada expansion, has created the material world, and the jivas are sent there. And although this material world is also an emanation of the Lord, and Lord is the one who is maintaining it, sustaining it, but the living entities there want to live in forgetfulness of God. Now, I'll ask you another question. Why is this material world? We analyze the world to be made of causes and effects and multiple causes and chain of causes and the final cause. Why has the Lord made it like this? There is another very nice statement in the Bible. It is said, the face of God is hidden. In the Bible, there is a statement which says, Knock and the doors shall open. Seek and you shall find. And a few things like that. I'm not very accurately saying it, but approximately like that. So in other words, in the material world, if you don't seek God, if you don't look for God, you will not find, because His face is hidden. So in the material world, there are scientists, they try to analyze, and when they what led to something, and they'll find a few causes. And then they may analyze those causes, they may find another set of causes, and they are happy with that. You will not find God, although God is the one who is pushing everything, is making everything. He is hidden. Krishna also uses a similar expression in the Bhagavad Gita. Sutre maniganaiva. Manigana means a nice necklace. Suppose there's a nice colorful necklace, there's a pattern, there are beads, there are colorful composition and then nice design, and I wear that, I look good and all those kind of things. Now, that necklace is so beautiful because there's a thread that is holding it. If I snap the thread, the whole thing will fall apart as just a bunch of stones and colorful beads or something like that. Right? It's the thread that is sutra is the one which is holding it. Sutre maniganaiva. It's like a necklace. The necklace is so beautiful. It has a pattern. It is shining. It is colorful. All of those things. But it's a thread that is holding it. If the thread snaps, it falls apart. In the same way, the material world, all the things, all the phenomena that we see in the material world, there's a thread that is holding it, and that's Krishna. Sutre maniganaiva. This is exactly what he is saying. Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam sutram mai sarvamidam protam sutre maniganaiva protam sutre maniganaiva. So I'm holding this material cosmos in this way. If I don't hold it, it will fall apart, but you cannot see me. So that is the way Krishna is holding this material world. He has made it into a series of causes and effects, so that the living entities who want to forget God, because God is very much here. He is the one who is holding it. But we don't want to see God. And hence He has made it in the form of cause and effects. And so when we look around for what cause, we will find so many causes, and we will say, oh, this is what the cause of this material world. And if you want, you can search another set of causes, but you will never find the ultimate cause because He's hidden. He doesn't want to show up because living entities don't want to see Him here. They want to forget Him. That is why the material world is made like this, in the form of causes and effects, and the living entities can remain in forgetfulness of God. But actually, that's not their constitutional position. Now, constitutional, I use that expression, the living entity wanting to be the center of all enjoyment. The living entity want to be the enjoyer, because he's not supposed to be an enjoyer, independent enjoyer. He's not independent, but he wants to be. So it is not constitutional. Now, Prabhupada gives a few examples of an unconstitutional desire. A desire which is not in line with the constitution, that's called unconstitutional desire. Like, I want to be the center of everything, all attractions, all enjoyment, all activities. That's what we are trying in this material world. In every situation, we want to be in the center of things. We want to be the controller of things. We want all glorification, admiration to come to us. That's what we are all trying in this material world. Actually, that's Krishna's position. It's not our position. So, Prabhupada gives two nice examples of a desire unconstitutional. There was a child, and the mother was trying to put the child to sleep in the night, and somehow the child is crying. And then the mother takes the child outside the house, and then she is trying to make the child sleep. And then the mother shows the child, look at the moon. And so the child looks at the moon. It's a full moon night, big moon. Now the child becomes even more cranky and says, I want the moon. And then the mother is saying, no, 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 you cannot get the moon. No, I want the moon. Unless you give the moon, I will not cry. I will not sleep tonight. I want the moon. And the mother doesn't know anything what to do. And then she brings the child home, and then the father is attending. And the mother is saying, no, he's asking for the moon. See, a child asking for the moon is an unconstitutional desire. Meaning, it doesn't fit with the constitution of the child, parents, house, and the moon's dimension. Is it possible for the father, okay, somehow I'll bring the moon and bring it into the house? Where will it? Moon will not fit into your house. It's too big. You don't have doors, you don't have windows to bring the moon into. It's unconstitutional. Even if the father was so powerful, he could bring the moon, say, can the child hold the moon in its hand? How small the child is, what is the size of the moon? It is unconstitutional. It is simply not in line with the makeup of the child, makeup of the parents, makeup of their house, and the makeup of the moon. It is unconstitutional. But the child is demanding, I want the moon, I want the moon. What does the father do? Father is an intelligent father. He'll bring one big mirror from the house, and then he'll adjust the mirror in such a way that the reflection of the moon is seen in the mirror. And the child holds the mirror and says, oh, now I got the moon in my hand. The child did not get the moon in its hand. It cannot get the moon in its hand. It's unconstitutional. The child only got a reflection of the moon, an abhasa. The child got the feeling that I'm holding the moon in my hand. The child cannot hold the moon. You see, the same thing happens in the material world through the mirror of Maya. Maya makes us feel, I am the Lord, I am the controller, I am so capable, I am so talented, I am the center of everything. Everyone should admire me because I am so wonderful. And there are people who will be admiring us, and this we feel very. This is what is happening in the material world. Just see. So this is one example of unconstitutional desire. There's another example Prabhupada gives of an unconstitutional desire. Because the jiva, who is an expansion of the Lord, of the original personality, absolute truth, meant to serve the Lord, but now misuse of the free will is now having different kinds of desires and all of that. So now this jiva can develop unconstitutional desire, and when it develops, Krishna creates this material world, and the material world is for that. And quickly, I'll give you the second reason. There was a small child again, and the child was watching the mother. The mother was in the kitchen. She was cooking. She had vessels, and there was a burner, and she was pouring oil, hot oil, and chili powder, and this and that, and all the seasoning, and all that was happening. The child saw the mother, and then the child said, Mommy, I want to cook like you. And the mother said, No, child, you are too small. This is hot fire and oil and heated oil. You cannot handle all that. Then the child said, No, I want to cook, please let me cook. And so what does the mother do? The mother says, all right, my dear child, you sit there, and then she will bring a whole lot of toy kit. And in the toy, there's a burner, there is a tawa is there is different things are there. And then the child is very happy with the small thing, and then is cooking, looking at the mother, imitating, and I'm also cooking. The child is very happy. But there is no food that comes out of the toy. Right? In the same way, Krishna creates for us this material world to give us an experience of something that's unconstitutional for us. For the child, small child, to think that I want to cook like the mother is unconstitutional. But the child desires that. And so mother gives an illusion of that one with toys. And with the toys, when the child is playing, is thinking, no, I have made the gulab jamun, I have made this one, that one, all those. There's no gulab jamun, there's no rasa there. In the same way, in the material world, we create all these kind of manifestations of relationship and activities and all of that. But the real rasa is not here. The rasa that we are looking for It's only with the Lord. So now this jiva, who is part and parcel of the Lord, meant to serve the Lord in his pleasure plan, he has desired wrongly and come into this material world, and the Lord has created this material world with causes and effects. He's hidden. He's the one who is driving. He's the one who is the basis of it. Everything has come from him. But the living entities want to forget him, so he has become hidden, and he is allowing this world to go on, and the material world is going on that way. But the Lord's intent is that, when will this living entity come back to me? In fact, that is the real intent of the creation, to give the living entity an experience of being in forgetfulness of God and experiencing different miseries, not finding satisfaction in that, and once again come back, realize the mistake of the living entity, surrender to the Lord, and come back to the Lord. That is the intent of the creation. So now you see the explanation from the Vedanta, from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, why we exist, why the universe exists, and what was the intent of the Lord for bringing us into this universe, and why it is meant to rectify the living entity's consciousness and to prepare him to go back to his original home. This is the overall picture. So that is why we come into this world. That's why this world exists. And this is the understanding that we get from the Vedanta philosophy. Now I have covered maybe 3 questions, and I'll try to take the other questions. Here is a question. Oh, this side. If upbringing of person is based on Krishna consciousness, everyone will be on the right path. Why can't Krishna forgive one's past karma or wrongdoing to give this opportunity to everyone? Yes, actually, this is the principle of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, whatever you have done in the past, I'm ready to forgive. And provided you're ready to act rightly from now on. Krishna's principle is also that. He's saying, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam raja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Now you surrender. What you have done in the past, I will forgive. Don't worry. But now surrender. But we are not even ready to surrender. So, if we ready to accept that principle that yes, Krishna, now I will surrender, Krishna is ready to forgive all the past. In fact, Krishna does, and hence we have hope to go to the spiritual world. Okay. Now let's take another question. How the Lord came into being. Again, a little philosophical question. Let's analyze this. We talked about the absolute truth, and from him, because he's a person, he wants pleasure, he expanded into many, and we are them, we are those many, and we are meant to serve him, and so on. Why does that absolute truth exist at all? Why not nothing exists? The revelation of the Vedic literature is that, yes, there is an absolute truth. Now, we have to accept that. Now, you cannot say, why we exist, why not, I also don't exist, God also, nothing exists. Where are we going there? So, but the fact is that we exist. We are thinking personalities. We are a human being. We are a conscious entity. It is a fact. That's what we are all. So, yes, we exist and the Lord exists. How Lord came into being? You see, when you ask the question, how Lord came into being, we are thinking there was a time when there was no Lord, and then he popped into the scene somehow, and he became manifest. So we are thinking there is a time, there was a time when he did not exist and then he sprang into existence in time. But we are saying no, time itself comes from him. He is beyond time. He is beyond space. He is transcendental. That's the meaning of the word adhokshaja. So when this question, how Lord came into being, is actually meaningless if you know what is the position of the Lord, what is the nature of the Lord. Lord never came into being. He always existed. He is eternal. Not only he is eternal and he always existed, he didn't come into existence. Even that's true about us. Even we did not come into existence. There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, Krishna is saying. Nor shall there be a time when any of us cease to exist. We always exist. So God also always existed. Never was there a time when God did not exist. And every other phenomena has come after from God. That's the meaning of the absolute truth, ultimate cause. Most of the explanations in your lecture have been with analogies. Analogy is no argument. We can create an analogy of anything with contemplation. There should have been definite definitions. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam reveals itself. Does Srimad-Bhagavatam also reveal itself by giving allegories and analogy also? Explaining castaway? Okay, we'll come to that one. So now, in any philosophical discourse, philosophy is to shed light on certain things that we are not otherwise able to see. So, using an analogy to explain something is not really an inappropriate, it is not some trick that we are playing on people or any such thing. There is a certain reality, we want to understand that, but there is another reality that we more easily comprehend, which we are more familiar with. So we explain this familiar reality and then draw a parallel to this and then help us understand something that we would not see otherwise. This is not inappropriate. This is not some kind of a trick, something that we are playing on people or any such thing. There is one logic in Sanskrit known as Chandra Shakha Nyaya. Chandra means the moon. Shakha means the branches of a tree. Now, I want to point out the moon, but you cannot see the moon, but you can see the branches of the tree because it's close by. So I tell you, look at this branch, now see there, there you can see behind that branch is the moon. It helps you show the way. So in the same way, we draw an analogy and something that we want to compare that has certain similarities. And this is something that we are more familiar with. So we explain this, and then because the two have certain similarities, from this familiar thing I conclude something, and then I show you this also has the similar similarities, and then you can draw another inference, another conclusion. So this is not at all an inappropriate thing to use in philosophical discourse, in philosophical communication. It is not that it is lack of argument, it is in some way lacking rigor or any such thing. It is a standard way to understand certain things. Like for example, I'll tell you, I'm running out of time. I should be conscious of time. Okay, 10 minutes more. I'll give you one example. Prabhupada says, if we get connected to Krishna, we get connected to the whole creation. So how does that work? If we get connected to Krishna, we get connected to the whole creation. So it may look like a difficult thing to comprehend. So Prabhupada gives the example. There is a woman. She gets married to a man. Now this man has father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, cousin. So many relatives are there. He comes from a certain family, right? Every man has got so many relatives connected to him in his family members. Now this woman gets married to this man. Moment she gets married to this man's father and mother become her in-laws, father-in-law and mother-in-law. This man's brother becomes her brother-in-law. Sister becomes sister-in-law, and so on and so on. So she makes connection with only one man. But that man has so many connections. Because she made one connection, she gets connected with everybody. You see, this is an analogy. It helps. So God is the creator of everybody. And with everyone, God has a relationship. And we relate with God. We become related to everything in the creation. Now you see, it's a very logical thing. It is not lacking any reasoning or logic or any such thing using analogies. So it is not at all inappropriate to use analogies. Okay. One boy, already in touch with Mayavada reading, he started following KC for 1 year, chanting 4 rounds, Prabhupada's book, reading Prabhupada's books and how to convince him. He finally wants to follow Mayavada because it appeals to him intelligently. So, actually what happens in the Mayavada understanding is, in the Mayavada understanding there is recognition of the absolute truth. But the question is that absolute truth is a person or an imperson? Is the doubt. So in Mayavada also they understand that there is an absolute truth, independent, and that absolute truth is beyond the material world. Now, what exactly is the nature of the absolute truth? That understanding is lacking and missing. Now you see, we come to the conclusion that the absolute truth is a person or a non-person or impersonal, all those things. It is not that we are making up any of these things. We are only taking this information from the Shastras. Very clearly. Take this example, this verse that I quoted earlier from the Bhagavad Gita. Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Mayi sarvamidam. Mattaha parataram na anyat kinchidasti. Krishna is saying there is no truth higher than me. I am that ultimate truth. Now, if somebody says that no, beyond Krishna there is one impersonal absolute truth. But Krishna is saying there is no truth higher than me. I am that supreme. And people, avajananti ma mudha manushim dhanum ashritaha param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Krishna is saying, fools, people who are not very, very evolved. Of course, he's using a very strong word. If people are not very properly understood, they think that I have taken a human form. They don't know my true nature as the controller and lord of all that exists. Avajananti ma mudha manushim tanum ashritaha. Manushim tanum ashritaha. Manushim tanum. Tanu means body, form. Manushim tanum ashritaha. When I have appeared in the form of a human body. Avajananti ma mudha manushim tanum ashritaha param bhavam ajananto. My true nature as a supreme personality, param bhavam, I'm actually of another nature. They don't know that. Mama bhuta maheshwaram. I am the Lord of all that exists. So Krishna is saying that I am that ultimate person. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante ma. I am the source of everything. You see, there's one more verse in the Bhagavad Gita. This is a very nice verse. In the 15th chapter. I'll read this one. This is so important. Towards the end, Krishna says, Yomam evam asammudho janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajate mam sarva bhavena bharata. Yomam evam asammudho janati purushottamam. Those who know me to be the ultimate person, without any doubt, asammudha janati purushottamam. Mam, know me to be. Krishna is standing there and speaking. Who know me to be the Purushottama, without any doubt. Sasarvavit, he is the knower of everything. He is the knower of, this is Vedanta. Sarvavit means knower of everything. And what does he do? Bhajati mam, and he renders service to me. And how does he do that? Sarva bhavena bharata. Sarva bhavena mam bhajati. With full heart, he serves me. So like this, there are many, many quotes in the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe we can have a separate session on Mayavada and how to counter that Mayavada, the various verses and the various arguments. We can talk about that more some other time. I have 2 minutes more. Kindly explain what is ether in 5 gross elements. Panchabhuta, ether, bhumi, apaha, analaha, vayu, kam. Kam is used, translated as ether. It means space. That's the understanding of the Panchabhutas. In the material world, everyone is busy after achieving something, but according to his karma, results are destined. Here my question is, how to balance one's life without over-endeavoring? I'll quickly answer this question. Yes, we have to do our duty, what is called upon us, but at the same time, we do not have to over-endeavor, because of our desires, we may try to over-endeavor, but ultimately what we get is what we are destined to get. How do we ensure that we don't over-endeavor? Both in the material life and in spiritual life, we will need to understand that we don't over-endeavor, because Rupa Goswami says that over-endeavor for material things is one of the things which destroys bhakti. So we have to be careful. Now, bhakti is always practiced under the guidance of a more superior, another experienced devotee or the spiritual master. Now, in the absence of the spiritual master, there could be other more experienced devotees, advanced devotees. We should take their guidance. That's the principle of spiritual life, and Prabhupada expected us to do that in his institution too. So if we want to know whether we are over-endeavoring or we are rightly endeavoring, we should take help of more experienced devotees, discuss with them, go into the details of one's personal life, and they will be able to help you understand what is your position and how you should act so that you don't over-endeavor and you act rightly. So I think most of the questions I have answered. Maybe there's 1 or 2 questions are there. In the next some sessions we will cover that. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.